This evening on the Rock Newman Show, my buddy, Glenn Harris, recently signed off from a 41-year career in sports broadcasting. His brother, Ron, made a name for himself broadcasting Howard University games. The Harris brothers talk DMV sports and longevity in sports journalism. That's coming up right now on the Rock Newman Show. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show from the campus of historic Howard University, located in the nation's capital. I'm Rock Newman, and it is my desire to inspire you with personal stories of extraordinary achievement. Glenn Harris has been a staple of DC sports broadcasting for 41 years. When he signed off on December 15, 2015, heavy hitters in the sports world came out to celebrate.
The Knights of Columbus wanted somebody to be the MC.
That's right.
And I said, it's a young kid in Southeast that I just heard.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and I think you guys ought to give him a chance. They said, how old is he? Hell, you a teenager.
Yeah.
They thought I was crazy, and they gave you the job.
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
did a hell of a job, boy, because I had a baseball bat right behind you.
And at the time, I was the first black anything
No
that
question.
they had on the table over there. Mm-hmm. And I guess, everybody called me all kind of names because I'm so light-skinned, but that's something I couldn't do anything about. But, but I had a good time doing it. I did it for almost 10 years.
But you were very good,
Yeah,
though. You were very good at it.
Glenn Harris and his brother Ron, also a sports aficionado, join us now. Man, when you get John Thompson, to come out of his recliner,
That's right.
and come in and pay tribute, you know that's a body of work that deserves a whole lot of respect. Thank you and Ron both for joining me today.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Rock.
You know what? Part of what I want to do here, and I sort of want to establish a benchmark, in that you guys are as DC gets.
We never sat on the bench now.
That's right. Both of you, let's start in the beginning, because I remember hearing stories early on when we met about your days at Barry Farm and walking up Suitland Parkway. And if I heard it right, you guys ate air sandwiches a couple of times. Talk to me about the early days.
Well, my mother, what she would do is, when we were hungry, she would say, let's eat air sandwiches till Daddy got home. And she would put the sandwiches together.
Wonder Bread.
Yeah, Wonder Bread, woo. And we would eat them. All of us would be.
And so you'd have actual, you would have actual bread? Or that
No,
was pretend also?
that was pretend also.
That was,
okay.
That was pretend also. And because you didn't have food in the house.
Exactly.
Times were hard.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. We didn't know it, but I mean, it was, we thought that was what happened every day.
And there'd be some times, that you would be walking up Suitland Parkway or Howard Road, and as little boys, one of y'all would say, Mom and Daddy ain't never got no food or money in the house.
Because it was cold, it was raining, and we walked every time. My mother was sick at that time, though.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any bus fare. The bus fare was 20 cents, I think, to get on the bus. But
the question we wondered later on is, why didn't we go to the elementary school a half a mile instead of walking Suitland Parkway to Garfield Elementary School from where we live?
Yeah.
Turner first.
Now Turner last for me.
Oh, and I went to Turner first, and then we walked, because we walked everywhere, walked from Turner Elementary School all the way up to Alabama Avenue to Garfield.
And again, speaking of your mother, we'll get to your dad. Your mom was a white lady.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know it till I was 15.
I remember being on WOL, and I got locked into using a word that day that, frankly, I did not know was wrong. And it was conversate. So I said something and whatever and said, we were conversating, you know, and I was trying to conversate with the woman. I trying to conversate with the man.
On the air.
On the air. I'm on the air, full of fire, brim, and ignorance.
You was a rookie too.
And so we went to break. We didn't have any cell phones at the time, but thank God she knew how to reach the station. And she said, baby, it's not conversate, it's converse. You're using that incorrectly. A terribly cultured woman. Yeah. And when people think of Glenn Harris and Ron to some extent, but you had, you know, a little more visible fire. Ron's nickname was Chief Folding Arms, and you did all the talking, and known for your incredible ability to be profane and profound. But you also know a little bit about classical music.
Yeah, I was playing some the other day, as a matter of fact, because my son didn't pay the television bill, so I don't have a television now. So, so I was listening to classical music.
And that's because he wanted you to focus on some other things.
Right.
So who's some of your favorites?
Rachmaninoff, Chopin, and it's a couple others. I can't think of.
And you got that from your mom?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what would she do? She said, you guys got to sit here and listen
No,
to this?
no.
She would vacuum and clean
Right.
with the music blasting.
Right.
And she had all the classicals, and we didn't know anything about it at that time. And our good friend Michael Glasgow in those days also got brought into the fold, and he started listening to those classical pieces. And that's how we learned this stuff, because she was really into it. Yeah. She was raised in New York, and I guess some kind of way she got into classical music and a whole bunch of other stuff.
You remember when I brought you to the house and played you some music, and you said, wait a minute, this sounds pretty good. And it was classical music, rock music, because I like everything.
Yeah, so I mean, we could, we fast forward through a lot of things, and then we can go back and forth.
Right.
But absolutely, this is a guy, Glenn Harris, who came to Howard University in 1970. There were 4 people recruited by the legendary Dr. Arnold W. McKnight. Glenn Harris was one, Butch White, the deceased Butch White, love him to death, and Robert Woodland. And Glenn Harris, the first day I saw Glenn Harris on Howard University's campus, he had on a red poncho and a big rawhide hat, looking very much like Clint Eastwood. And we were on the team, and so we were on the baseball team, and Glenn, we would leave the dining hall and come back up to the gym, which if anybody knows anything about Howard's campus, that's probably half a mile walk.
Up the hill.
And Glenn quickly developed a nickname, and the nickname was Walkie Talkie, because he would walk and talk to everybody, and he'd always have to run and catch up with us. Ron, as the younger brother, tell us about some of your childhood memories looking up to the big brother.
Well, we were 14 months and some change, a difference in age. So we always played on the same teams together, 12 and under. I was a little younger, he was slightly older. And of course he came to be probably the best catcher in this area.
Yeah.
Even to this day on the high school level.
In terms of baseball, in terms of catching.
Yeah. But then when he started off, he was a third baseman. Because we had a guy named Claude Williams who was the catcher. So Claude caught that year, and then Glenn started catching from the next year on. And we were always so different in personalities. I was not one to get all excited about things, and he would get fired up. You know, he'd strike out, he might throw the bat, that kind of thing. And
Helmet.
Yeah, none of that really influenced me, because I was just the opposite. I mean, I didn't want nobody wants to strike out. Rock, you struck out a couple of times. You know, you go to the bench,
once.
you get your glove. Yeah, maybe you get your glove. You're going out to the field. In this case, put on the equipment and go. So, but you know, I always was in his corner as he moved up. You know, through 14 and under and on through high school. Yeah. So,
you know, as we sit here and we have this show based in D.C. on Howard University's campus, and talking sports, which, you know, I frankly don't do that often, but I'm real happy that you guys are here and that we're able to do it. So you're talking about 14 and under. You guys, each of you, I think remember back fondly and almost in awe of somebody named Donald Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah, Donald Thompson was, well, to this day, he's the greatest player to ever play at Ballou Senior High School. He could play everything. He could shoot marbles, play ping pong.
He could.
He could play baseball, basketball.
Football.
We had to talk him into playing football in high school. He just got in there, led the team in rushing. It was all conference, all inter-high, we called it then. Now, you talk about in awe, and he was just a year or so older than we were. They were in the same class. But he could do everything in sports.
So now, was definitely what I wanted to ask is, Glenn, I know you came out at one point with with DC's 50 greatest basketball players. One of the things I wanted to ask each of you and see if you have the same opinion or a different opinion. In terms of Washington, D.C. sports and athletics, who was the greatest athlete through all the years?
Well, that's tough. I mean, are you talking one sport, or did he play 2 or 3 sports?
I was just saying, let's take we'll break down. We'll go into the individual sports.
Yeah.
But in terms of if you had to pick one person
Well,
in Washington D.C., out of Washington D.C., with all of your vast experience, who do you think? And I know it's a tough question.
Not for me.
But,
not for me.
Not really, not for you. Okay, well let Glenn answer first.
Well, you got yours. I got mine.
Who do you think?
I don't know. I mean, Willie Johnson was a great athlete. Went to Eastern High School. He's late now. He's not living anymore, but he was a great one, man.
Willie Johnson.
Willie Johnson went to Eastern High School. He played everything.
If you had to make a choice, would you say it was Willie?
I don't know if I make a choice, but I'd say he's one of the greatest athletes ever come out
Well,
of
then
this
do
town.
this for me. Ron obviously has someone in particular, but do this for me, Glenn. So Willie Johnson, and name a couple of others that you probably would have to give consideration.
I'd say Mickey Bowers. He played pro baseball.
In terms of
Ted Markopoulos was a great player.
Ted Markopoulos.
Yeah, he was a good one. Reggie Rucker.
Yeah.
Reggie Rucker was one of the great athletes to come out of this town. He played everything.
How about a guy? Seemed like to me he was about 5'6".
You're taking my guy.
Oh, really? Well, you talk up to him.
Well, to me, it's Roger Scott.
Yeah, right.
Roger Scott was a tremendous running back at Phelps at 5, 6, or 7.
Right.
And as a baseball player,
Oh, yeah.
he was a guy at that size, and Rock, you know him, he could take over a game.
Yeah.
He could take over a game in clutch situations. He was going to hit the ball on the nose every single time on whatever level we were playing at.
Yeah.
From high school on up through summer leagues. Roger never signed a pro contract, and only because he didn't have a really good throwing arm. The scouts liked him because he could run,
And he
could hit the ball so far with wooden bats in those days. So Roger, a two-sport star, was my favorite guy.
Yeah, he was a great athlete. And Chuck Vincent. Chuck Vincent played at Phelps. He was a basketball player, big-time baseball player, went all the way to AAA and came to the big leagues. So he was a good player. I mean, players will come to mind as I talk a little bit, you know.
Sure.
But he was a great hitter. And Jimmy Williams was a great player, too, at Eastern High School. We had 2 3-sport athletes in those days. Everybody played. You know, I don't know how their grades were, but I know at Anacostia, you had to have grades at that time. I'm not knocking any other school.
Sure.
But at Anacostia, man, we were, whew, it was rough over there in those
Let me
days.
tell you what we didn't know much about, and you know more than us because you're from PG County. You guys had some great athletes out there. So who would you pick?
Oh, who would I? So then now we're talking DMV.
Well, let's say DMV. Yeah, PG County.
Oh, holy moly!
Your county.
Yeah. You know something? And many people in this audience might not be aware of him. You've already mentioned his name. It's hard for me to go outside of picking Roger Scott, Shoes as he was called.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, his what I hear about his football exploits. Let's stay with him just for a second.
Okay.
Roger Scott in football. Describe his play.
Well, let me tell you, he played with a little guy beside him too. They had this huge line, so you really couldn't see where Roger was. He made second team All-Met only because DeMatha had Garrett Ford and Brendan McCarthy.
My goodness.
Those two made first team All-Met.
Yeah.
Roger would have made it if it wasn't for those two.
Yeah.
And they went on to play pro ball after college. And Roger was second team All-Met. But I tell you, when he played us at Ballou, when I was there, I was in the 10th grade. I was 2 years behind Roger. He rushed for 235 on us, and took a kickoff back for a touchdown. I'm on the bench. He ran right by me.
And you guys had a good team.
Yeah, we had a decent team.
Yeah,
We had a decent team in my 10th grade year.
Okay, let's talk about the individual sports now. Okay, you mentioned Reggie Rucker. Went on and had a great career with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. Well, he played for 3 teams, but Cleveland was the big one. Yeah.
Most known for Cleveland. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of football players,
And a good student. He was an excellent student.
yeah, smart guy. Smart guy. Let me share this story with the listening audience here. So you and I both are feeling after our junior year that we're in some of the best shape of our lives, you know, and so it's just prior time before Reggie Rucker was going to training camp, playing pro football. So we come out to the University of Maryland, and we both are going to demonstrate to him it doesn't matter that you're playing professional football. Whatever you do out here, we're going to do better. And as I remember it, I don't think you were this bad, but as I remember it, about 4 minutes into the exercise, I was hurling and vomiting. I mean, the excellence and the how physically fit the professional athlete is beyond most everybody else in the world.
I hung in
It's
there pretty
something
good,
that
Ron.
you did. It's something that most people don't have an appreciation for.
Right.
But okay, so each of you, let's talk for a moment, and because what we're doing here is we're going to be starting debates, which are going to go all through the barbershops, everywhere else around town. So the best football player ever to come out of D.C.
Oh, my goodness. You got
Ever, for me, it was so many good ones. Scotty Glacken at St. John's was
Dick
a great,
Drummond was a great player
Dick
back in the
Drummond
50s.
was a good player. He didn't play offense, did he?
Yep.
You know, he ended up in the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Dick Apsher was a good player. And a
Now
couple.
you're talking D.C. only, D.C. public schools?
Well, we can expand it.
Yeah, well, it was all,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
yeah,
DMV is okay. Yeah.
Lonnie Perrin.
Oh, my
From
goodness.
McKinley Tech.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great
Basketball,
player.
played
Denver
basketball
Broncos.
also.
Yeah, he was a basketball player
Yeah.
and baseball player.
Okay.
Yeah, Lonnie was an excellent player.
Okay.
And he went to University of Illinois.
Yeah. I don't have enough discipline not to go over the basketball now, and we're going to ask about who the best player was. But what I want to get from you guys is who was the greatest team? What was the greatest single team? Now I'm going to give you my position on this.
I got mine.
McKinley Tech,
69.
I think it was 1969.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
The Magnificent Seven.
Right.
Let me see how good I am with this. Bassett, Bassard, Tatum, Hogue, Milan,
Pretty good.
Bradshaw,
That's the
Brown.
seven.
and Bradshaw and Brown. The Magnificent Seven.
Right.
In the first game, I think, of the season that year, or it certainly was the first big game in 1969.
Right.
DeMatha playing McKinley.
At-
Public school versus Catholic school
At the University of Maryland.
at the University of Maryland.
14,000.
That's right. Hey, folks, this is a high school game we're talking about. We're talking about Cofield House, and we're talking about a 100% packed, sold out
That's right.
Cofield House. I remember the tip-off, and it was tipped to Hogue, and he got to the basket. It seems as if before any of the DeMatha players turned around, and McKinley Tech went on to demolish DeMatha in that game. They came back at the Knights of Columbus,
And James wasn't playing.
and James Brown wasn't playing. Morgan Wooten, the psychological genius that he was, draped James Brown's jersey over the chair.
I remember that.
The Stags from DeMatha got extremely fired up and beat that McKinley Tech team. But
Beat
Smoked
them
them
bad too.
I still think that McKinley Tech team
Oh yeah.
was the
Oh,
best
yeah, it was.
team.
There were 3-4 pros on that team.
Do you guys, are you?
Yeah,
you
that was
guys-
my
I
team.
agree- I agree
69
with that.
McKinley
Yeah.
was the best team
And-
that I saw.
Actually, the next year, 71 team was a great team with Lonnie Perrin. Lonnie Perrin was a beast in basketball.
Yeah.
You know, he was a great player. He was a great athlete.
Now that McKinley Tech team, who we talked about Morgan Wooten. I can't remember coach's name from McKinley Tech at the time.
McKinley Armstrong.
McKinley Armstrong. So when we talk about the greatest team, let's talk a little bit about the greatest coaches.
Well, before we leave the team, you got to put Bebe Duren's undefeated Dunbar
Goodness
team
gracious.
right there with McKinley. I
John
don't remember
Duren.
the years, but that was Shelton and Durham.
Craig Big Sky Shelton,
Yeah,
you're talking
they were
about.
33 or 36-0.
Yeah.
And Duren, who, for the record, was my favorite high school player of that era. Before that, I would have to pick Bernard Williams. When I was, he's a little ahead of me, but I admired those guys as you did the high school kids. Maybe the kids now admire some of the players now, but I know we did growing up.
And so Baby Duren, was you admired him so much. Why?
Well, first of all, he was extremely clutch. If you put him at the free throw line, he's going to make the free throws.
John Duren is his name. We call him Baby.
Yeah, John. He was a. They didn't call him point guards in those days, but he was the lead guard. He
And
had the
Glenn,
ball
you
in his
pointed
hand.
to his head.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, he was smart.
He was like that in college, you know. And I think he would have been a very good pro player had he not gotten hurt. He got hurt in his third year.
Okay. Okay. So you developed a sweatshirt, which everybody who has any interest in sports in the Washington D.C. area tried to get, and it was the top 50 basketball players
In my mind.
in your opinion.
No, Rocco's was the top 100.
Yeah, yeah.
But one shirt had 50.
Oh, and
the next shirt had
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
guess so, yeah.
had 51 to 100. Yeah.
Who was at the top of that list?
Well,
Oh, please, yeah.
Elgin Baylor was at the
that's-
top of the list.
Yeah. Yeah, deservedly so.
As the greatest player.
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember who number 2 was?
Well, 2, I think, was some controversy. I think Glenn had either Adrian Dantley or Austin Carr as 2, or was it Dave Bing?
I don't know, it was one of those three guys.
But it was some controversy with Dantley being over Bing or Austin Carr being over
I
somebody.
don't even know if it made that much
God,
difference.
what firepower we're talking about here,
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
when you
yeah.
talk about those guys.
Yeah, they were great players.
Yeah.
Great players. And a lot of the people that are playing today, they cushion their games after these. I mean, after these guys, of course, they're
So you
younger.
got Elgin Baylor, you got Dave Bean, both of those from
Spingarn.
from Spingarn.
Yeah, yeah.
Both coached by Dave Brown?
No.
No. Bing was coached by
Dave Brown was at Anacostia in those days.
Okay.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yeah.
Coach Bing.
We just brought up Dave Brown. I remember a lot about him.
Yeah, he was my favorite coach. He's passed on now.
One of the things I remember about him is the first time I ever went to Chrisfield's. We're talking some serious DMV here now. I ever went to Chrisfield's Seafood Restaurant. Dave Brown took me there.
Right.
Tell us the Dave Brown story or two.
Well, he was a good guy. He was he used to keep all of his paychecks in a drawer. 5, 10 paychecks.
Yeah.
Me and Reggie Rucker looked at each other like this. Man, he got a lot of money, man. I'm telling you, boy. I mean, he was a great man. You know, a lot of people liked him. Some didn't like him, but we were young. But I never had any problem with him.
And one day, you and Reggie Rucker were.
Oh yeah, we were up at Catholic University, and Dave.
You guys had no money. You were
No,
hungry.
we had nothing. We had no money. Well, we never had any money. And he said, Harris, son, here's a quarter apiece. Go get yourself a fish sandwich or the submarine. In those days, a submarine wasn't 25 cents. Me and Rucker fell out laughing, boy. We laughed so hard, man. But that's been 50-some years ago. I'm not remembering all of it, but I tell you, that was so funny. And he was so serious, took out 50 cents. Here, Harris, you take 25 cents. Man, we were on the ground. We laughed so hard.
You know, being a county boy and looking at DC sports, I remember the name Aubrey Nash.
Yeah, pretty good player. He's gone too. Passed away.
Yeah. Played with DeMatha.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, those Mac and DeMatha games in those days, when Nash was at DeMatha and Austin Carr, Garland Williams, Wiggy Savoy, Bobby Rowell, all those guys for Mackin could hold their own. And Nash was he clutch. He was all-Met in basketball and football.
Football, he was All-American.
Went to
football.
Kansas.
We keep talking about DeMatha, and part of the reason we talk about DeMatha is because their coach, Morgan Wooten,
Went in the city and got the players and brought them out there.
Yeah.
and was one of the winningest coaches.
Oh yeah, he was
of
a great.
all
Yeah,
time.
he was a good
First high school coach to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
And I was going to ask you guys, do you think that Morgan Wooten is one of the greatest coaches?
Yeah, no question.
No question. And he coached football at first
Yeah.
at DeMatha. And, I mean, there's stories about Morgan. I mean, I didn't play for him. I didn't really know him. Glenn knows him. You know, he the way he prepared his team, he wasn't a yelling and screaming in your face kind of coach like Dave Brown. Dave Brown wasn't that type of coach either.
Right.
But I think, in my opinion, you don't need to be a yeller and screamer to be a good coach. Chuck Hinton wasn't. Now, Chuck would get his points across by, some sarcasm and this and that. But he would put you in position or teach you how to maneuver a pickoff play or how to run from first to third or how to go about a ball hitting the gap just by showing you and telling you. And that's how these great coaches are.
Glenn, so I remember maybe 78 or so, 4 years after we left Howard University, starting to see you end up along the sidelines at the Capitol Center of Bullets games.
Yeah.
How do you go from being walkie-talkie at Howard, with Hall of Fame baseball player there? What people don't know is he called you Mad Dog in football, number 54. Used to crush people over at Banneker. Did you have aspirations at an earlier time of being a broadcaster?
No.
Or what? Tell us about that journey.
No. I Dewey Hughes and of course Kathy Hughes, who these guys are well known in this area.
Sure.
But Dewey heard me talk one day, and he said, "You know what, man? I believe you can go on radio."
Even though you were probably cursing.
Nah, I probably. Yeah, next to him.
Right.
So I said, no, I was nervous. I said, no, I can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
He took me, and in those days, you just ripped it off the wire and just read. You didn't do no commentaries or nothing.
Sure.
So I went on the air. I mean, I didn't go on the air. Yeah, he took me to these stations and gave me this thing. And told
Now,
me to
was
read
that
for
when
him.
he was over at WRC?
Yeah,
Still
he was
Channel
at, yeah,
4?
he was at Channel 4 then. He was a big boy. at
Like
Channel
community
4.
affairs.
Yeah,
director.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah. He was over there. He said,
And folks, those of you who don't know, we're talking about the Dewey Hughes that was played in the movie Talk to Me as Petey Greene's confidant, manager, what have you. Right.
Yeah, I met Dewey, and he was a tough dude, man.
Yeah.
And it made me mad a couple times too.
Sure.
And but that didn't make any difference to him, because Ronnie was on the air. He put me on the air, and I did a show called Let's Talk Sports, I think, something like that.
On the radio? Or
Yeah,
TV?
remember we were on the radio?
Well, that was when he was at WOL.
Yeah, he was at
Him
WL.
and Kathy had
right.
bought the station.
Yeah. And when we were on the air together, he took Ronnie off the air because he knew I would have a future or something like that. Said,
And I was pitiful, by the way.
Well, no, you weren't pitiful.
Okay, but wait a minute. You know what? So that first time though, what about ripping? He gave you something to read.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
And that was over at WRC.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He took me to WRC and worked with me for hours. He'd give me some water or something. I'd sit there, and I was reading all of it. And I did a show called on Channel 4, The Place. Not the.
What was it? The
called
Place.
The Place.
The place.
And
That's
the
right.
Place used to be
Right.
on radio with kids. He bought the place. I had Rudolph Brewington was with me,
Right.
and Sue Simmons was with me. I was so nervous, man. I was actually going to the bathroom on myself. I'm glad I had good sphincter muscle.
Oh.
I was holding stuff in, and sphincter is a good word, but I was so nervous, but I got it done. So what he told me to do, don't read the prompter, don't do anything. Go out and get your own stories. Woo! Man, I was out in the hood trying to get stories from people and sports stories, making them up. And I came back. Now I'm gonna tell you right now, by the time I got to, I don't know, 6 months there, I was pretty good. And I guess I was pretty good. He kept me 40-some years ago. And he liked what I did. And, I just kept going, man. I didn't know anything about unions, nothing. So the union people called me, said, you gotta pay some union dues. I was only getting $100 a show. So I paid my union dues, and I kept going. So
Then you started Let's Talk Sports at WOL.
At WOL, right?
That's right.
Exactly. And I was doing sports over there, and Dewey actually fired me. I said, what the heck?
I think it would be interesting for our audience to understand. They hear about WOL now, Radio 1, and they know that there are 50, 60 stations or whatever it is, and there's a radio, there's TV 1, and so the conglomerate, and Kathy Hughes and her son Alfred run this empire.
I used to take him to the basketball court when he was a little kid.
There you go. But those days, WOL was housed in had a little studio up on
Wisconsin and R Street.
Wisconsin and that was all they had. And for a period of time, Kathy Hughes lived in the place where the studio was because she didn't have enough money to pay the rent where she was living. So she and her son lived in those headquarters.
Right.
Well, there's another story. Of course, at that time, Peaches and Herb, which is a local group, Herb came on board to assist them.
As an investor.
Yeah, at a time when they were, that's when Polydor had just signed Herb, who grew up in Berry Farms in that area, and the original Peaches had some big hits in those days. And I think he made a loan to them or some kind of way he assisted them in keeping that ship afloat.
He still looks good too.
Oh, Herb looks great. I saw him, he's I think 73 or 74 and is in playing shape. He's absolutely in playing shape. So Glenn, advancing your career, you left WOL, which was a small 5,000 watt AM station, and then started to work at the giant WHUR.
Yeah, and that was luck, because the general manager called me one day and said, look, I want you to come over, I'm gonna take you to lunch. He never took me to lunch, but I guess that was a good way to get me over there. I went over to the station. He says, I want you to be on the air. I'm like, on the air? What, And I was the intramural coordinator at Howard University. And
so much Howard history up in her.
So I went from, I used to go work in the day, and I had a job at night, and then I went over to the station to do the do sports. Then I started doing real good, and the general manager said, look, I want you to come over here full time. I said, whoa, full time.
Real broadcast career.
I said, yeah. So I went over there and started, and I only had 3 guys: Greg Mosso, I had Robert Stevens, he was on our staff, and me.
Ron Sutton was in there somewhere.
I took Ron's place.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ron Sutton
I took Ron's
was
place.
there earlier.
And Ron's gone too. And he said, I told everybody, I said, look, I'm not gonna boss anybody around or anything, but we're gonna do what we have to do. And we had I was there for 14 years before I went to Channel 8. Yeah. And that's just bringing everything all together. I mean, there's a lot more going on, but I mean, we only got an hour show. So.
Did you ever do anything here? I know Kojo Nami during that time was certainly a giant here at WHUT.
Yeah, I was here.
You did some stuff here?
We did a football show here. I did a football show for 3 years here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so you spent 14 years at WHUR.
Right.
During that time, run? Did you broadcast?
I had come on board to. We did the Let's Talk Sports show on Sunday. I basically was a fill-in. If he took off, I would do the show.
Okay.
We did it together maybe once or twice, but we started doing the Howard football and basketball games together, of which I did 12 years. I have to go by the coaches. I think we started when Floyd Keith. I started when Floyd Keith was the coach.
Right.
We went all the way through the Willie Jeffries era and then the early Steve Wilson era. And then for some reason, one of the presidents at Howard decided that he didn't want to broadcast the games anymore, so they took them off. Haven't been back on since.
And we did basketball too.
Yeah, basketball too.
And you, after 14 years at WHUR, this new upstart TV company came
Channel
in,
8.
owned by Joel Albritton, who owned ABC, the Channel 7 affiliate, Albritton Communications.
Yeah.
Riggs Bank.
Riggs Bank. Was accused of laundering a lot of money for the Chilean president.
I don't know nothing about that.
Allende. You went to News Channel 8.
Yeah, I got a call at HUR. The guy says, "Hey, I'm from News Channel 8, and I heard you. I know you do sports. I've been watching you. I'd like you to come on over to Channel 8 and just talk about a job." I said, "What?" I don't know what was going to happen at HUR.
Right.
Jim Watkins is a good friend of mine now, but at the time we were a little tight, and I mean, like going like this, and I don't know if he was going to hire me back or not. I don't know what was going to happen, because this business is funny.
Sure.
So I went over to Channel 8. I did an audition. He was going to keep me, I think, but he gave me a test. He said, "Look, I can audition you next week, or you can do it today," or what. I started thinking. I was so nervous at first. I said, "Oh man, I'll do it today," and I did it. Got the job.
Got hired on the spot.
Right, because he said if I had waited another week, he would have hired somebody else.
What was that, a test or something?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
And
this business
so
is funny.
That was
You know what it is, right?
approximately, that's 20 plus years ago.
24 years ago.
24.
93 or 83?
No, it was 91.
91.
Both of you obviously, as serious DCites. I'd like to have both of you to reflect on news that other guests that I've had commentary about. Johnny Holiday was on, James Brown was on. You had Superman at the University of Maryland, a guy by the name of Len Bias, drafted high up.
Yeah.
Many thought would match or be superior to Michael Jordan. The moment you heard of his death.
I was in California, Rock, and they got the call. I heard that Lenny something had happened to him. I said, "What's wrong?" I don't know what was wrong. I was at a conference out there or something. And I started crying, man. It was rough, man. Lenny was on my show about 2 weeks, on my radio show, and talking about he went gone to Los Angeles and all this, and he was happy and all. And they told me what happened, man. I was broke. I broke down, man. He was a good friend, and I had always yelled at him at the Urban Coalition Pro Basketball League.
Sure.
And he learned. He got better every year. I don't know if he was a Michael Jordan, but I mean he was as good as Michael at the time. And his jumper started falling. He started doing everything correct. And all of a sudden, boom, he's dead. I said, "What?" And I talked to a couple of players that came over to my office here at WHUR, and they sat down and talked with me. And see, the players could talk to me when they couldn't talk to other reporters. because they know if I said something, if I said I wasn't going to talk about it or whatever, I wouldn't talk about it.
Off the record meant off the record.
Yeah, off the record.
Yeah.
And at the Super Bowl, it was the same thing. Art Monk and those guys would talk to me, but they wouldn't talk to the other reporters and give them a full deal. So I felt good about that because I had earned that. And I came from, you know, I had some good friends, Steve Buckhantz, who's now big time, Phil Chenier, all those guys were my friends. And me and Buck, I'm a little older than Buck. And he always said, man, he always gave me some good perspective, man. So I always did that. I never had any arguments with players or anything. And I kept it low, man. I didn't say anything that they didn't want me to say.
I got something I really want to come back to you on. In addition to this little book right here, absolutely filled with wisdom. And it says hardcore wisdom for young folks, and it's called Grit Tough. And it's a very appropriate name. We can't say on a PBS show, tell people to go, buy anything. We can't do a call to action like that. All I'm gonna say is I think this is filled with wisdom, and everybody would be wise if they had an opportunity to take a look at it. Ron, Len Bias is.
Well, when I heard, I was reporting with WHUR then. I would go out to fights, as you know, from as early as 81 when Leonard fought Hearns the first time.
Yeah.
And Tom Pope.
September the 16th, 1981.
You were there.
100 degrees out there. Tom Pope from HUR called me at home and said, "Did you hear about Bias?" I said, "No." They said he died. So Pope, he was away, so I was the guy who was going to get a story together, and when they went on the air, say something about it. So I drove out to the campus to just see whoever I saw, and they might want to say anything about it, wrote up some stuff. And then I went on and said, something, on the surface, because I didn't know the details of what happened. So that was the first time. But I only knew Bias from the night we stood out at the car that night after he did your show. We must have been there at least 2 hours. And he was talking about, he didn't know where he would be drafted. Or was he already drafted by then? I don't know if he was drafted, but he knew he was going to go high. And the Celtics picked him, I think, number 2 in the draft. And he knew that he was going to sign for big money. And he kept saying, well, people are coming at me now, and relatives I never heard of before. And Glenn was giving him some wisdom about, though he never signed for no big money, but he had ideas about how, people would come out of the woodworks and that kind of thing. And he was tight with his mother and his brothers, his father. Okay. So that went on for at least a couple of hours out there in a chill night that night.
He had his LA baseball cap with him. And he was a good kid. But everybody's got a life they live. And everybody tried to press him. He was a drug addict. He was all that. Man, I don't know about all that. I think he was having fun as a young man, and did what he did, and got the wrong stuff, man. And I know some guys that was with him, and I'll keep their names quiet, and people that know.
Sure.
But I talked to a lot of them, man, and they were crushed, man, crushed.
One of the most tragic pieces of sports news.
He was so popular,
and it was everywhere. People loved him.
Well, I tell you one thing, it turned the drug thing around. I tell you, as far as people knowing about the drugs and all that kind of stuff, because in the 80s, man,
bad time.
It was rough in this town, boy.
Bad
I'm
time.
telling you.
You would prefer that I didn't do this, but I'm gonna do it anyhow.
Okay.
Today, if one points to a broadcaster or an announcer who they would want to call a game and give it flavor and excitement and insight, X's and O's also. If a lot of people, if they had to pick just one, they would pick a guy by the name of Gus Johnson.
That's my man.
And at a program feeding you, providing you some well-deserved tributes.
A Howard University graduate, Gus Johnson is
Howard
too.
University graduate. I heard Gus Johnson say out of his own mouth that you're the person most singularly responsible for him being the man he is now, not just the broadcaster, but the man he is now. Tell us about the Gus Johnson journey.
Well, first of all, Gus was a baseball player at Howard. You know, I don't think he had any aspirations of being a pro or anything, but his major was, it wasn't broadcast journalism, that's for sure.
Okay.
But he liked me, and he'd always hang around and, hey man, can I be your intern or something? I said, okay. So I brought him in as an intern and fired him.
Cussed him out and fired him.
Yeah, I fired him, but I didn't really fire him. I faked like I was firing him, but I couldn't fire nobody. And but he was a student, and he was young and you know, all over the place.
Yeah.
And he was not coming on time. He was, you know, and he was supposed to get my copy and write it down and make sure I understood what he was doing and all that. But he wasn't doing it for a couple times, and I said, hey man, you're out of here. Just like that. I did a Dewey Hughes on him.
Yeah.
And he cried and everything. And I said, hey man, look, you know, when you cry, I get all upset and everything. I said, look, you know, I'm not gonna fire you, but you gotta come in here. This is a serious business, man. Right. I took him through, man. He did a good job. His voice changed, everything. I used to slow him down because he was going all fast on television. Right. But he went down to, way out there, out where Baylor University was. He said there was so much racism out there. Yeah. I couldn't tell you what it was because I wasn't there with him, but he said it was terrible, man. He was getting ready to get out of the business. Right. He was so good though. He was sharp and he was getting better every day. Yeah. And they called him up here, and he did some work for some stations up here. Excuse me, up here, and he was moving around and stuff, and then he finally locked in. He's big time now, big time. And he called me the day before the Super Bowl, and we talked for a while. But it's good that I see a lot of people out there that I worked with. Tony Kornheiser was the first guy to call me and ask me about, how do you just sit there, Glenn, and just talk? That's what Tony has everybody on this show. Sure. You know, he's a smart guy, does everything. But he had never done talk radio before, not like that.
He was a writer for the Washington Post for years.
Yeah.
He and Wilbon.
Mike Wilbon, all these guys that are big time now. They were James Brown. The first time JB got in the business, I gave him a list of stuff. He had it so long, it was like that. He had to tear it apart. But James is big time now. These guys are big guys. I'm proud of them. I'm happy. I had a job. They were going to give me a job as the bullet broadcaster one year. Well, they wouldn't give it to me. I auditioned. Me and James auditioned. They picked Frank Herzog, which was okay. And James was the color guy. So the lady called me from the station and said, Glenn, we've already picked our guy. I said, okay. You know, I understood in the business that you got to be, okay, that's what it is, you know. I wasn't mad, uptight, or anything like that. And I told JB, if you ever need any help, just call me about some stuff, man. Call me the day before the Super Bowl. I mean, they were at the Super Bowl rehearsing. He texted me, said, hey, man, how you doing? I'm okay, I'm doing this. I mean, so that's the kind of stuff that I get from guys that I've helped out. I've helped a lot of people. And they still like me, and I still like them. There's a couple guys that didn't like me so much. I don't know why. I never got in arguments with them or anything, but that's okay because we're all older now, and it's over, man. You know, you did what you did. I'm getting my retirement from Channel 8 and AFTRA and all of that, so that's a good thing, Rock. I'm not mad at anybody or uptight. I had a good time. This guy right here has kept my head together, you know, putting it together. And I actually had a stroke. You know, and like I'm stumbling now a little bit. I never stumbled, ever. But now I'm doing it because my memory is not as great as it was and all of that. But I'm getting better. I'm getting better. And he's always been there to help me. My brother, man, you know, he's a tough sucker.
You know, for the parent that is out there looking in, that has a kid and is questioning whether or not they ought to involve them in team sports? Both of you take a stab at this. Ron, what is team sports? You've played all of your life. What do you think how do you think team sports helped you and prepared you to move into adulthood?
Well, the times were different in that kids specialize now in one sport. They don't play them all like we did. But as young as I think I was 8 when I started, and he was 9. And we moved up, played every year for years and years, for me all the way until the 80s. It's certainly a way to learn teamwork, a way to learn, to way to have a camaraderie with your teammates. And if you really want to be a good player, you learn the game. Hopefully you got good coaches, young coaches, good coaches that can coach young people. That's not, fire and brimstone. And I just think that as you grow older in the sport that you're playing, or the various sports, you learn something from each coach, you learn something from each teammate, and turn around, you're 35 years old, and all those lessons that you learn, you put into your place as a man at that point.
See, this area used to have, I met you when you were 16 years old. We were playing in a national baseball tournament. I mean, the Washington Black Sox was one of the best ball clubs, sandlot ball clubs, which all the guys played pro ball.
Best franchise.
Yeah, one of the best franchises. Of course, you were one of the greatest home run hitters ever.
But I would say in America, not just in this region.
Yeah.
Because
when you're talking sandlot, semi-pro.
Right.
Channel 4 came and did a special on us one summer. I can't remember. Bob Costas introduced the piece.
Right.
I forgot who the reporter was. And they were down at Black Sox Stadium. They filmed and talked to our coach, Dopey Jones, some of the players, the older players then. And it was something that wasn't to be, snickered at. In those days.
Nobody snickered either.
Glenn, because I had this platform, one of the good things about it is I can kind of steer things in the direction in which I want it to go sometimes.
Right.
So here we go. Somebody had a great impact on your life. The gentleman that recruited us to Howard University. Some reflections from Robert Glenn Harris on Dr. Arnold Woodrow McKnight.
Yeah. Mac thought, I was an older guy when I came to Howard. Well, 23, not that old. But I mean, because I didn't go to college, I didn't go to Vietnam because I had a knee surgery, and I got to go to college. I got to get in school. I got to do something. I came from junior college. I was going to go to the University of Miami. That's where I wanted to go. Well, it was a lot of stuff going down in Miami in those days that you can flip a coin about. But anyway, when I came up this way, he heard about me. He said, "Glenn Harris, you don't know me that good," or anything. He thought I was a drinker and I smoked a little bit and all of that. He said, "I'll give you a full scholarship to Howard University." That's the only way I could go because my parents didn't have any money. I'm 23. He was like, my father looked at me and said, "Okay, right." I got into Howard, and I was one of the first recruits that McKnight had. Whew, boy. We heard of Rock Newman, pretty good hitter, PC County, and Bobby Woodland, and Butch White. I helped recruit you guys.
Yes, you did.
Because, I don't know how we would have been. We had some pretty decent players at Howard, but they weren't, they weren't us. So we brought it. I mean, that's how I got a chance to get an education. Ronnie was at GW and playing baseball. And the thing about it, I didn't know my way. I didn't know my back from my front academically. I was a decent student. I ended up being a good student, but Anacostia was rough in those days academically. And I still didn't catch up to what I wanted to catch up to.
So McKnight had great impact on all of us.
Mac had, I didn't want to get off on that. Mac was a good guy, but Mac knew he didn't know baseball that great. So after our first year when we went like 7-0 and then we lost 7 straight.
I'll tell you what, we have such a short amount of time. We've got 90 seconds left.
Right.
My nephew Patrick out there is watching, and he wants to be a broadcaster. And I'm sure folks got a lot of other kids out there who know of the legendary Glenn Harris that want to be broadcasters.
How old is he?
He is 10 years old, and what I would say, what I'm asking you is a minute of one minute of your time to talk to that audience who has a kid who wants to be a broadcaster, and you would say what?
I would say it's tougher today. Well, it's getting tougher now. It wasn't as tough when I was coming along. It wasn't that many black performers out there. It was enough, but not that many. But tell your son to read.
Or your daughter.
Or your daughter. Yeah, that's right. They got them all out there. Read, articulate himself. Always read and take everything and bring it into you. Like I said, I had this thing. I'm not as sharp as I was, but that's what he needs to do. Read, listen, talk all the time, and I don't care if you get on the bus. Hey, and like I'm reading this prompter now. That wraps us up for the evening. More information on this program or any other program.
In other words, conversate.
Have conversation, with people and talk about it because this is a tough business. And today is tougher than when I came along because it's not many broadcasters that are getting that one deal, you know what I mean? The union and all that stuff.
I can't thank both of you enough for coming here. I can't believe it. Folks, that wraps us for this evening. For information on this program or any other program produced by WHUT, go to WHUT.org. I'm Rock Newman. God bless you, and we'll see you the next time.
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.